Hey, what's up guys? This is Anthony from Anthony's Customs, and for this video, we are doing a top 10 because it's the end of the year and it's time to capitalize on that advertising revenue. But in all seriousness, it is a good time to do a bunch of top 10 lists. They're a lot of fun for me to make, they're a lot of fun for you to watch, or so I'm told, and so that's what we're doing. It is interesting to me, though, that we have been 5 years into collecting since my last giant video, my only giant video, the top 100 figures of the decade. That was 5 years ago, guys. I thought it was just like yesterday, but turns out it's been a while. So I thought we could do kind of a follow-up / lead into the next one in the next 5 years and just do a top 10 video for the last 5 years. Yes, we could do 50 and make it a big, long, drawn-out thing. I don't think we need to do that yet. I'd rather save all that gusto for the top 100. So we're going to do a top 10 for the last 5 years, though I am going to sprinkle in a few extras that kind of go parallel to other entries. So it's going to be more than 10 technically, but we're going to have 10 slots plus an honorable mention. One thing to note is this list has changed many times, not just in who's getting on the list, but also the order. So, you know, take it with a grain of salt. These are very subjective things. I've already changed the list once today. I'll probably want to change it after I film. I'm not going to. So, you know, things could be interchanged. So let me know in the comment section below, guys, which things you think would have made the list, or which things should be in which order, or whatever you want to tell me down there. It'll be fun to have a little chat. But here's the list I settled on at the time of filming. So let's go ahead and get started with an honorable mention or two. So for the honorable mention section, we actually have a few different figures. The first one I want to talk about, or at least group, is the new Sonic movie figures. I've only reviewed Shadow up to this point. I have a bunch of them though, and these figures are incredible releases. I'm not particularly into Sonic or anything like that, but for $15, these are amazing. They are loaded with articulation, and the paints and sculpts are certainly good enough. They're not perfect, they're still $15 figures, but they have articulation that rivals Hasbro or McFarlane or any of the lower-end domestic companies. They really give you a whole lot for your money. So they're not the most incredible figures overall, but for the price, they're kind of unbeatable, and that's why they had to make the list. Now, for the second entry for the honorable mentions, I have two figures from McFarlane Toys. The first one is Azrael. This is from the White Knight batch where they're super stylized and kind of Pixar looking. But this one and the Batman, which is going to be the second one in addition to this, they are just really, really well done figures. They have the right sculpts, they have enough paint, and they pose really well. They have good accessories. These are some of McFarlane's best figures for the DC line. Yeah, we have a few others like the Azbat and things like that, but those were sorely lacking paint, and despite having a good sculpt, it made them, you felt like you needed more. These guys don't have that. These guys feel great. They are excellent releases. Like, yeah, you could have more paint or whatever, but they're really, really well done. And then the last entry for the honorable mention, I told you guys I was going to squeeze some extra stuff in here for that viewing goodness. We have the NECA Super Shredder. There are 3 releases. We're not including one of them because I don't care for the color scheme, but the standard release, excellent figure. It's super photogenic. It poses well enough and it has enough in the way of accessories, but it does feel like it's lacking in some of the articulation choices, so I didn't want to put it higher on the list. And yes, it could easily go there if you wanted to, but this is just the way everything shook out. So we have this one, and then my personal favorite is the Shadow Master version. It's not movie accurate, but it looks freaking awesome. It's one of the coolest looking figures NECA's ever released, and despite the posing limitations, it does pose well enough to look good on a shelf. So yeah, I really wanted to get these guys on the list, even though I couldn't quite figure out how to get them higher up on the list. Alright, coming in at number 10, we have the MDLX Transformers from 3-0. I'm not going to list all of them on here. You can pick which ones you like the most. They all generally have the same quality. There are a few that are lacking in certain areas, but overall it's an excellent line. You're going to get a ton of action figure for your money. They're covered in paint, they're covered in sculpted detail, and they tend to pose really, really well. The only real downside to this line is, other than a little inconsistency in the finish, some are glossy, some are flat for their body panels, things like that, is the stylization. Some people aren't going to love all of it. Optimus has some weird things on his ankles, his head is kind of strange, but if you like those features or don't mind, they are really, really good looking toys. I don't know that you can get much more for your money at this price point than what 3-0 is putting out. So yeah, go ahead and pick up a few. I've reviewed a bunch of them, and I'm going to review more, but for here we have Optimus and Megatron. I think Megatron is probably the best one that they've released to date. And yeah, you just get so much for your money. It's really nice to see a lot of paint and sculpted detail on an action figure for not an exorbitant price. Coming in at number 9, we have the Figma Samus Aran from Metroid Dread. Now, I know a lot of you are thinking Figma, they are not that good for the price, and they haven't been for a long time as a whole, but they've also started to incorporate new articulation and design elements that they didn't do for the longest time. So to see them update their stuff, it does bring their figures up to a reasonable standard of articulation and design that does fit the price point well enough, and this one is a good example. It's painted really well, it poses incredibly well, and it comes with a really good spread of accessories. It's probably the best Samus figure they've released. The Prime suit is a really good one, but this one I think takes the cake, so here's hoping they make a Super Metroid suit that has this kind of articulation and design put into it. In at number 8 is a lot of people's favorite SH Figuarts figure. It is Cooler, and this has to be one of their best releases. It's not a perfect release, don't get me wrong, none of these figures are, so if you're just going to come try to pick them all apart, you can do that, but they're still really good figures. This one comes covered in paint, covered in really good sculpt, and the articulation actually works surprisingly well. Like I said, there are some things here and there that could be better, but you'll be hard-pressed to find an SH Figuarts figure that has all of these things to the degree that this one has. On top of that, it happens to be a really cool character design, so when you mix all of those components together, you get a figure that's going to stand out on your shelf and you're going to really enjoy handling and displaying. In at number 7, we have NECA's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles The Last Ronin Raphael, and the reason I have this guy on the list is there has not been, to my recollection anyway, a figure at this scale with this amount of paint and sculpt that comes together so cohesively in recent memory. It's just, there's something special about this release. I don't know if it's just the matte finish with the washes and the paint application that's there, or they just happen to nail the sculpt. There's something going on here. It has that certain something that most figures don't have. I think it might be that it has a little bit of soul put into it, a little bit of extra something that you don't see these days that this figure still somehow has. The only real downside is it doesn't pose the best, but for a Ninja Turtle, it actually does pose pretty well. So when you mix that, a good spread of accessories, and just an incredible aesthetic value, you're not going to be able to do too much better than this figure at this price point. Coming in at number 6, we have the new batch of SH Figuarts Naruto figures. Now, their first foray into Naruto did not go that well. They had a bunch of bad releases, but when they came back so many years later and released this bunch of figures, I don't know, they hit gold, I guess. They struck gold because so far they're making them all really good. Some of them aren't as good as others, but they're all really, really good. They're probably the best anime line that Bandai's working on right now. I would say the best one they've done is probably Kakashi, but then any of them are fine. Like, you could just pick a basic Naruto nowadays, and it's a good figure. Any character you pick from this line right now, from the modern releases, not the old ones from so many years ago, they're all really good. And I know all the One Piece and Dragon Ball fans are like, why not us? What the heck? Or Kenshin, especially Kenshin. I don't know. I don't know what's happening, but the Naruto line is just consistently awesome, so pick any one you want and you can put it on this list. I'm going to count Kakashi as the best, but that's my personal take, because Cousin Frank's just that kind of guy. Coming in at number 5, we have the Revoltech Spider-Man 2.0, the newer one, not the old one, definitely not the old one. This is the newest one, and it is an amazingly good release. Now, I know what you're thinking, Anthony, you don't like Revoltech, or it looks like a robot. Well, I'll address both of those. One, I don't dislike companies. I dislike certain things that companies do, and when they don't do those things, I'm perfectly okay with it. And this figure doesn't have any of the QC issues that they used to have notoriously. This figure is stylized as all heck, and that's addressing the robot thing. If you don't like that, that's totally your call. But it does what it's trying to do so well. This is easily one of Revoltech's best releases. It poses so incredibly well, and it does it in a way that, okay, yeah, some parts are a little bit robotic, but when you're posing it, you're not going to notice those as much. It does have the chunky sculpt and the extra cuts and things, but it can achieve poses basically no other Spider-Man figure can achieve. So you're definitely doing a trade-off here, and I know a lot of people would never put a Revoltech anywhere near any sort of top 10 list. Again, there's a lot of subjectivity in something like this, so it may not be for you, but they did what they were trying to achieve in a very successful way. It's easily one of the most dynamic Spider-Man figures you can get, and it looks great on a shelf if you can get around those few caveats that are necessary to let it achieve the incredible posing that it can achieve. And it does have a really nice paint job too. Coming in at number 4, we have the Flame Toys Megazord. This is going to kind of go along that same vein as the Revoltech in that if you don't like the styling, then this one's not going to be for you. But objectively, they did what they were trying to do. I happen to personally love the styling, so of course I'm going to put it on the list. But they achieved a very cohesive look for Megazord. It's incredibly well executed. The Flame Toys figures, yes, they're super expensive, but I have never felt like, oh, you know what, I didn't get my money's worth. Like, yes, they cost a ton, but I've never handled a figure of any brand that has the same level of quality as these. Now, there is one thing to note with this one. I cannot get the damn waist to twist, and that's why he's not higher up on the list. I don't have any other complaints about this guy other than a few like little design choices, things like that don't really matter, except I can't get his waist to twist. It's supposed to twist, other people can twist their waist. Mine won't twist. So I had to leave him up here at number 4 instead of pushing him higher up. I would have definitely preferred that because I absolutely adore this figure. It's so cool, it's so well executed, it poses so well, but I can't twist that damn waist. So he's at number 4. Alrighty, in for number 3, we have the 2-pack of the NECA Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, The Secret of the Ooze, Toka, and Razar, or Razar, however you want to pronounce his name. These guys, they don't have the absolute most articulation given the character designs, but I don't think NECA could have done any better at this price point. And it's a very fair price point, at least it originally was. These guys are absolutely jam-packed full of sculpted and painted detail. They are basically just taken from the movie and put on your shelf. I don't know how NECA was able to do as good a job on these guys as they did, but they did. Now again, this is kind of like if you don't care about a big wolf and turtle, then you know it's not your thing. But if you're into this at all, these things should be in your collection. They are probably NECA's best work at a normal price point, and NECA doesn't have a lot of weird price points. They seem to have fallen off lately, but when these guys came out, they were definitely the peak of NECA's work, and I think they probably still are. They're just so incredibly well handled. I don't think they could have done better, honestly, other than like, you know, QC could be perfect as opposed to just really good, things like that. But yeah, these guys are easily deserving of a spot in any collection where the collector might be even sort of interested. They're that good. Coming in at number 2, we have another Flame Toys entry. This is their Optimus Prime. Now, it's my opinion that if you are a Transformers fan of any variety and you can swing this cost of a figure, you should have this in your collection. Unless you hate the design, of course, like it's a stylized thing, so if you don't like it, then fine, skip it. But if you think it looks cool, save up, sell a couple things, get a few fewer crappier figures, and get this guy in your collection. It is easily one of my favorite figures in my collection. It's that cool looking. Yes, high price point, but you get every penny's worth out of this figure. They are made so incredibly well. The attention to detail, the articulation, the paint, the sculpt, the light up features, the accessories. You really can't do better than these. You're paying for it, don't get me wrong, but it is worth it if you can justify the cost to yourself. And obviously collecting is a thing where, you know, we're all spending money on toys, and some people won't spend over a certain amount, or some people love to only spend over a certain amount. That's your thing. You figure out how you want to do it, but I'm letting you know that if you can figure out a way to do it, you will be happy with this release. They are that good. It's easily one of my favorite figures. This and maybe the Megazord, honestly, are some of my personal favorites. So check them out if you can. Alrighty, and finally, coming in at number 1, we have the Jada Street Fighter line. I'm not going to pick any particular figure because some of them have pros and cons, but I have to include this line at number 1. Now, you guys know, I do have a particular affinity for Street Fighter figures, so my bias could be showing here a little bit, but I'll counter that by saying I actually don't like a lot of the things Jada's doing in the aesthetic department on these figures. I really wish they didn't have the particular look they have. I'm okay with it, but I would do it differently if it was up to me. And I think a lot of people feel the same way, but a lot of people really love this line, but that's not why we're here. We're here because Jada has achieved something at this price point that no other company in recent history has even come close to. They are showing collectors that you can release a good product with new sculpts and accessories and at least some paint and good posability for a very reasonable price point. You're not going to get better value for your dollar from a company anywhere across the board at $25. Yes, they might have too cartoony looks, or they might have too soft a sculpts, things like that. Yeah, you know what? Stylization's not always going to be everybody's cup of tea. You can't please anybody, but you are getting your money's worth every time you buy one of these figures. Couple QC issues here and there, some mismatched plastic colors. Okay, you know what? That's a trade-off for a company trying to do really good figures. And unfortunately, that's just the way it goes. You have to try to get one that's a good one. But when you do get a good one, it's going to blow everything out of the water. There's not a single Marvel Legends figure I can think of that stands up to one of these. There's not a single McFarlane Toys DC figure that stands up to one of these. Even the worst one of these is still giving you way more for your money, because there's an attention to detail and a care that the people are putting into it that you just don't see that often these days. Not that often at all. So pick whichever one you like, put it on the list. I would say probably Guile's maybe the #1 spot. Maybe Chun-Li, I don't know, her face is iffy. You know, there's a few things here and there you could decide between, but yeah, this line is just, it's what we should be expecting from all the companies at this price point. It shows you it can be done. So all these people that like to justify all these other lines not doing a good job just because they want a certain character, you know, the proof's in the pudding. There's stuff out there that proves you wrong every single day. You can have good figures for your money, and Jada is proving it. They've released an excellent line, and it seems to be only getting better. So here's to them making more good figures and not proving me wrong as they continue. Hopefully these guys make it on the list by the end of the next 5 years. But yeah, that's our #1 spot. We're going to go with the Jada Street Fighter line. I think my biases balance out. Yeah, I like Street Fighter, but I don't like the styling. So hey, I'm unbiased, and it's canceled out. So yeah, #1. That's what I say. Let me know what you guys think. Alright guys, that'll do it. That's my top 10 list for the last 5 years. And yeah, we did squeeze in a few extra things, but hey, what's wrong with a little bit more? It never hurts to collect more things, right? So anyway, let me know what you guys think about this list that I came up with. Let me know which things you might put on the list. Let me know which things you think didn't belong on the list, and we will talk about all of that in the comment section below. But otherwise, that's it for this video. Stay tuned. I have at least a few more top 10 videos specifically for 2024 coming out before Christmas, so keep your eyes open for those, and in the meantime, keep collecting.